Part 1. The Market. The smell hit Captain Lee first. Sweat, fear, and something else he couldn't name filled the air of Nexus Station's lower levels. He pulled his jacket tighter and walked deeper into the crowd. This wasn't his usual part of the station. Lee traded in metals and ship parts, not in the dark business that happened down here. But today was different. Today he needed information about missing cargo ships, and the black market was the only place to get it. The slave auction was happening in the center of a large room. Hundreds of different alien species stood around, talking in their strange languages. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others had 3 eyes or purple skin. To them, this was just another business deal. Lee stopped walking. In the middle of the crowd, on a raised platform, stood a girl. She looked maybe 16 years old. Her skin was silver, almost like metal, and it caught the dim lights of the room. 2 small horns grew from her forehead. Her people were called Cytherians, Lee remembered. They lived far from human space. The girl's hands were chained behind her back, her clothes were torn and dirty. But what made Lee's stomach turn was her eyes. They were completely empty. No hope, no fight left. Next item, called the auctioneer. A fat creature with 4 arms. Young Cytherian female, age 16 standard years, strong telepathic abilities, perfect for mining operations or housework. Lee looked around the crowd. Nobody seemed bothered by what was happening. A few aliens were even smiling as they raised their hands to bid. Then Lee saw him. An older Cytherian male stood near the platform. His clothes were expensive, but his hands shook. He kept looking at the girl, then looking away quickly. The bidding starts at 5,000 credits, the auctioneer announced. Hands went up all around the room. Lee watched the numbers climb higher and higher. The girl on the platform didn't move. She just stared at the floor. The older Cytherian male stepped forward. Lee could see tears in his eyes. "I'm Kang," the male said to the auctioneer. "This is my daughter Yuna. I brought her here myself." Lee felt sick. A father was selling his own child. "Ah, yes," the auctioneer said with a grin. "Family sales always get better prices. The buyers know the merchandise comes with proper papers." Kang's voice was barely a whisper. "I had no choice. The syndicate wants their money. If I don't pay, they'll kill us both." "Not my problem," the auctioneer replied. "Do I hear 6,000? More hands went up. Lee watched as creatures bid on. A scared girl like she was a piece of equipment. His hands formed fists at his sides. Back on Earth, Lee had a daughter once. Maya was her name. She died in a transport accident when she was 15. Every night for 3 years, Lee dreamed about her smile. Every morning he woke up alone. Looking at Yuna now, chained and hopeless, Lee saw Maya's face. "Sold!" the auctioneer shouted. "To Overseer Vax for 12,000 credits." A huge creature with grey skin and red eyes walked toward the platform. It had tools hanging from its belt, tools that looked like they were made for hurting people. Yuna finally looked up. For just a moment, her empty eyes found Lee in the crowd. She wasn't asking for help, she was just saying goodbye to the world. That look broke something inside Lee's chest. He pushed through the crowd as Overseer Vax grabbed Yuna's chains. Lee didn't have a plan, he just knew he couldn't walk away, not this time. Not again. Part 2. The plan. Lee stayed in the shadows as Overseer Vax dragged Yuna through the station corridors. His heart pounded, but he kept his distance. Following armed slavers wasn't smart, but leaving that girl wasn't an option either. The DY group stopped at docking bay 7. Lee crouched behind a stack of cargo containers and watched. Vax's ship was massive, a converted mining vessel called the Iron Fist. Rust covered its hull, and black smoke poured from its engines. It looked like a flying prison. Yuna stumbled as they pushed her up the loading ramp. Lee counted 12 guards. Around the ship, all of them carried weapons, all of them looked mean. "This is stupid," Lee whispered to himself. "You're going to get yourself killed." But he couldn't stop thinking about Maya, about how he wasn't there when she needed him most. The Iron Fist's engines roared to life. Lee ran back to his own ship, the Starhope, as fast as he could. His legs burned, but he didn't slow down. "Nova!" he shouted as he burst through his ship's airlock. "I need you to track that mining vessel, the one that just left Bay 7. His ship's AI came online with a soft blue glow. Nova wasn't just a computer. She was his partner. They'd been together for 8 years, ever since Lee started trading. In deep space. Tracking now, Captain, Nova said in her calm voice. The vessel is heading toward the outer rim. Their destination appears to be the Kepler mining colony. Lee dropped into his pilot seat. How long until they arrive? 18 hours at their current speed. Good. That gives us time to plan. Lee pulled up star charts on his main screen. What do you know about Kepler colony? It's a private mining operation, Nova replied. Officially, they mine rare metals. Unofficially, they use slave labor. The colony has no government oversight. Security. Heavy. 24 armed guards, sensor arrays, and automated defense systems. The colony is built inside a large asteroid. Only one way in or out. Lee rubbed his face. This was getting worse by the minute. Nova, I need options. How do we get one girl out of a fortress? Captain, may I ask why we're considering this rescue mission? The odds of success are less than 12%. Lee was quiet for a long moment. Outside his ship's windows, stars moved slowly past. Each one represented a sun, maybe with planets, maybe with people living their lives. Because it's the right thing to do, he finally said. That girl didn't choose to be sold. She didn't choose to be a slave. Someone has to help her. But why us? Why you? Lee thought about Maya again, about all the times he'd been away on trading runs when she needed him, about how he promised himself he'd be a better father, right before she died. Because humans don't leave people behind, he said. At least, we're not supposed to. Nova was quiet for several seconds. Then she said, I've been analyzing the Iron Fist's security systems. They have a weakness. Lee sat up straighter. What kind of weakness? Their communication array is outdated. I can jam their signals, but only for 15 minutes before they notice. That's your window. 15 minutes to get in, find the girl and get out. Correct. But Captain, there's something else. The mining colony receives supply shipments every week. The next one is scheduled for tomorrow. Lee smiled for the first time since leaving the slave market. And I bet they need a new supply contractor. I can forge the necessary documents, Nova said. But once we're inside, you'll be on your own. I can't help you from the ship. I know. Lee started plotting a course for Kepler colony. But that girl helped me remember something important. What's that? Maya used to say that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people you choose to protect. Lee's hands moved across the control panel. I failed my daughter once. I won't fail this one. The Star Hope turned toward deep space. Behind them, Nexus Station grew smaller until it was just another dot of light. In 18 hours, Lee would either save Yuna or die trying. But at least he wouldn't run away. Part 3. The rescuee's hands were sweating as he walked up to the Kepler colony's main entrance. He carried a data pad filled with fake supply orders that Nova had created. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his face calm. Name and business, growled the guard at the gate. He was a Thraxian, 8 feet tall with skin like armor plates. Captain Lee. I'm here about the food supply contract, Lee said, holding up his data pad. Your usual supplier had engine trouble. I'm the replacement. The guard scanned the documents. Lee held his breath. If Nova's forgeries didn't work, this would end very quickly. Everything looks right, the guard finally said. Bay 12, you have 2 hours to unload. Lee nodded and walked deeper into the colony. The place was carved right into the asteroid's rock walls. Dim lights cast long shadows everywhere. The air smelled like metal dust and fear. He found the slave quarters by following the sound of crying. Through a barred window, Lee saw them. Dozens of people from different worlds, all chained together. They were digging in the mines with simple tools. Their hands were bloody. Their clothes were rags, and there was Yuna. She looked even smaller than before. Her silver skin was covered in dirt and cuts, but she was still alive. That was what mattered. Lee waited until the guards changed shifts. Nova had been right. They were sloppy about security, too confident that nobody would try to rescue slaves. When the new guards were settling in, Lee slipped through a maintenance hatch. The colony's blueprints that Nova had found were perfect. He crawled through air vents until he was right above the slave quarters. The drop down was 8 feet. Lee landed as quietly as he could. Yuna looked up from her digging. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. "You," she whispered. "You were at the market." "I'm here to get you out," Lee said softly. He started working on her chains with a laser cutter. "All of you." "It's impossible," said an old man chained next to Yuna. His skin was blue and wrinkled. "The guards will kill us if we try to escape." "Not if we do this smart," Lee replied. The laser cutter sparked as it cut through the metal. "I have legal documents that say this operation is illegal. If we can get to my ship, I can call for help." Yuna's chains fell away. She rubbed her wrists where the metal had cut into her skin. "You don't understand," she said. "Overseer Vax owns us. The law doesn't matter out here." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Lee's blood turned cold. "Someone's coming," he whispered. "We need to move now." But it was too late. The door burst open. Overseer Vax stood there with 6 guards behind him. His red eyes burned with anger. "Well, well," Vax said with an ugly smile. "A human trying to play hero. How touching." Lee stepped in front of Yuna. "These people are being held illegally. Under Galactic Trade Law Section 47, you have to release them." Vax laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "Human law means nothing here," he growled. "You just made a big mistake." The guards raised their weapons. Lee's mind raced. He'd planned for this moment, but seeing those gun barrels pointed at him made his mouth go dry. "Actually," Lee said, pulling out a small device, "you're the one who made a mistake." He pressed the button. Alarms started blaring throughout the colony. "That's a distress beacon," Lee shouted over the noise. "It just sent our location to every human patrol ship in this sector. They'll be here in 6 hours." "Kill him," Vax roared, but Lee was already moving. Years of military training kicked in. He dove behind a pile of mining equipment as laser blasts lit up the room. "Yuna!" he called out. "Can you run?" "Yes," she replied. "Then stay close to me." Lee grabbed a mining tool, a heavy metal bar used for breaking rocks. It wasn't much against laser weapons, but it was better than nothing. The first guard who came around the equipment pile got the bar across his head. He dropped like a stone. "This way." Lee grabbed Yuna's hand and ran toward the emergency exit. More guards poured into the room behind them. Laser blasts scorched the walls as they ran. They burst through the exit into the colony's main corridor. Lee's ship was 3 levels up and half a mile away. It felt like the longest run of his life. Part 4. First Trust Yuna pressed herself against the wall of Lee's ship, as far from him as possible. Her whole body shook. Every muscle was ready to run, even though there was nowhere to go. Lee stood near the door, holding a tray of food. He moved slowly, like he was approaching a frightened animal. "You must be hungry," he said softly. "I brought some soup and bread." Yuna stared at the tray but didn't move. In her experience, food always came with a price, usually a painful one. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Lee set the tray on a small table and stepped back. "Nothing. You're safe now." "Nobody helps for free." Yuna's voice was flat, empty. "My father taught me that. So did the slavers." Lee's face tightened with anger, but Yuna could tell it wasn't directed at her. "Your father was wrong, and so were they." The ship's door slid open. A human woman walked in carrying clean clothes. She was about 30 years old with short black hair and kind eyes. When she saw Yuna cowering in the corner, she stopped. "Oh, sweetheart," the woman said gently. "Look at you." Yuna flinched. The woman's voice was soft, but Yuna had learned not to trust soft voices. They could turn cruel very quickly. "This is Hana," Lee said. "She's my engineer and friend. She won't hurt you." Hana knelt down and placed the clothes on the floor, then backed away. "These should fit you better than those rags. There's a bathroom right through that door where you can wash up." Yuna looked at the clothes. They were simple but clean, a soft shirt and pants that looked like they would actually fit her small frame. "Why?" she asked. "Why what?" Hana replied. "Why? Are you being nice to me? What do you want me to do?" Hana and Lee exchanged glances. Yuna caught it and tensed up more. In her world, secret looks between adults always meant trouble for her. "We don't want you to do anything," Lee said. "You're not a slave anymore, Yuna. You're free." "Free?" The word felt strange in her mouth. What does that mean? It means you get to choose, Hannah said. Choose what to eat, what to wear, where to sleep. Choose what you want to do with your life. Yuna shook her head. That's not how the world works. Someone always owns you. Someone always controls you. Not here, Lee said firmly. Not on my ship. The smell of the soup was making Yuna's stomach hurt with hunger. She hadn't eaten real food in days, but every time she reached toward the tray, her hand stopped. It felt like a trap. Hannah seemed to understand. She sat down on the floor, far, enough away to not seem threatening. When I was young, Hannah said, I lived on a planet where women weren't allowed to learn about machines. My father said it was men's work, but I loved engines and computers. I used to sneak out at night to practice fixing things. Yuna listened, despite herself. One day, Captain Lee found me hiding in his cargo bay. Hannah continued. I was trying to steal food because I'd run away from home. I thought he'd turn me in to the authorities. But he didn't? Yuna asked quietly. No, he gave me a job instead. Said he needed someone who understood machines. That was 5 years ago. Hannah smiled. He's never asked for anything in return except honest work. Lee nodded toward the food. Again. It's getting cold and you need to eat. This time Yuna's hunger won. She crept forward and grabbed the bowl of soup. It was warm and tasted like vegetables and real meat, not the processed paste they fed slaves. She ate so fast she almost choked. Slow down, Lee said gently. There's more if you want it. You don't have to eat like someone's going to take it away. But old habits were hard to break. Yuna finished the entire bowl in less than 2 minutes. The clothes are there whenever. You're ready, Hannah said. And there's soap and shampoo in the bathroom, hot water too. Hot water. Yuna hadn't had a hot shower in months. I don't understand you people, she said, still clutching the empty bowl. Humans, I mean. Everyone says, you're dangerous, that you're violent and unpredictable. Lee sat down in a chair across the room. We can be violent when we need to protect people we care about, but we're not cruel. There's a difference. My father said humans were the worst species in the galaxy. Your father sold you to slavers, Hannah said quietly. Maybe his judgment isn't so good. Yuna flinched at the words, but she couldn't argue with them. What happens to me now, she asked. That's up to you, Lee said. But for now, you rest, you heal. You remember what it feels like to be safe. For the first time in her life, Yuna thought that might actually be possible. Part 5. Family Bonds. 3 weeks had passed since the rescue, and Yuna still jumped every time someone knocked on her door. But she no longer hid in the corner when Lee brought her meals. Good morning, Lee said, setting down a plate of eggs and toast. Sleep okay? Yuna nodded. The nightmares were getting less frequent. Some nights she actually slept through until morning. Hannah's teaching me about the ship's engines today, she said, picking at her food. Is that allowed? Lee sat down across from her with his own breakfast. Yuna, you don't need permission to learn things. That's what I keep trying to tell you. It was still hard for her to believe. On her home planet, children weren't allowed to touch anything important, and slaves definitely weren't allowed to learn about technology. Tell me about Earth again, she said suddenly. Lee smiled. Over the past few weeks, Yuna had started asking about his home world. She seemed fascinated by the idea of a planet where people chose their own jobs and lived where they wanted. What do you want to know this time? The schools. You said children go to school for free. That's right, every child gets an education no matter how much money their parents have. Yuna shook her head in wonder. On her world, only rich families could send their children to learn reading and math. What was your daughter like? She asked quietly. Lee's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Yuna had never asked about Maya before, even though she'd heard Hannah mention her once. She was curious about everything, Lee said after a moment, always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. Like me. Yeah, like you. Lee's voice got softer. She would have been 17 now, just a year older than you. Yuna felt something tight in her chest. What happened to her? Lee was quiet for a long time. He stared out the ship's small window at the stars moving past. Transport. Accident, he finally said. I was away on a trading run, gone for 2 months. Maya was traveling to see her grandmother when the ship's engines failed. I'm sorry. I wasn't there when she needed me most, Lee continued. I kept thinking that if I'd been home, maybe I could have protected her. Maybe things would have been different. Yuna understood that feeling. She'd blamed herself for her father's gambling debts for years. It wasn't your fault, she said. Lee looked at her with surprise. What? Maya's death. It wasn't your fault. Bad things happen sometimes, even when good people try to stop them. How did you get so wise? Lee asked with a small smile. Slaves learn to see truth quickly. It keeps us alive. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Yuna asked something that had been bothering her for days. Why did you save me? Really, Lee put down his fork. Because it was the right thing to do. But lots of things are right. You can't save everyone. No, I can't. Lee leaned back in his chair. But I could save you. And maybe saving you helped save me too. What do you mean? After Maya died, I stopped caring about anything except work. I just flew from planet to planet, trading goods, not really living. Just existing. He looked at Yuna directly. But watching you heal, seeing you smile again, it reminded me what family really means. Yuna felt tears in her eyes. We're not really family, though. We're not the same species. We don't even have the same blood. Maya used to say that family isn't about blood, Lee said. It's about the people who stand by you when everything goes wrong. The people who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. And you believe in me? I've seen you survive things that would break most adults. I've watched you learn to trust again after terrible betrayal. Yes, Yuna. I believe in you. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. On my world, fathers abandon their children when times get hard. Well, you're not on your world anymore, Lee said firmly. You're here with us, and we don't abandon family. Later that day, Yuna found Lee in the ship's small workshop. He was fixing a broken navigation tool, his hands steady and careful. Lee, she said from the doorway. Yeah? When people ask who I am, what should I tell them? Lee looked up from his work. What do you want to tell them? Yuna thought for a moment. For the first time in her life, she had a choice about her own identity. I want to tell them I'm Yuna, and that I'm part of the Star Hope crew. That sounds perfect to me, she smiled. It felt good to belong somewhere. Part 6. The Hunt. The alarm screamed through the Star Hope like a wounded animal. Yuna jerked awake in her bunk, heart pounding. Red warning lights flashed in her small room. All hands to stations. Lee's voice crackled over the ship's speakers. We have incoming hostiles. Yuna ran to the bridge in her sleep clothes. Through the main window, she could see 3 dark ships closing in fast. Their hulls were painted black with red markings, bounty hunter colors. How did they find us? Hana asked, her fingers flying over the control panels. Someone put a price on our heads, Lee said grimly. He was already strapped into the pilot seat, his hands steady on the controls despite the danger. Nova's voice filled the bridge. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the lead ship. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life. Yuna's breath caught in her throat. It was her father, Kang, but he looked different now, angry and desperate. Lee, "Ferve the Star Hope," Kang said, his voice cold. "You have stolen my property. Return my daughter immediately and I might let you live." Property. Lee's voice was deadly quiet. "She's a person, not a thing you can own. She is my daughter," Kang shouted. "I brought her into this world. I decide what happens to her." Yuna stepped forward even though her legs felt like water. "Father, please, I'm happy here. These people treat me well." Kang's face twisted with rage. "Happiness? You think happiness matters? I owe the syndicate 50,000 credits because of you. If I don't bring you back, they'll kill me." "Then you should have thought of that before you gambled away everything we had," Yuna said, surprising herself with her courage. "Enough talk," snarled a new voice. A scarred bounty hunter appeared next to Kang on the screen. "We're here to collect the girl and the reward money. Surrender now, or we'll take her from your wreckage." Lee cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Hana, how long until we reach the jump point?" 12 minutes at full speed." "They'll catch us in 8, Lee said, studying the tactical display. "We need to buy time." The Star Hope shook as the first laser blasts hit their shields. Yuna grabbed her nearby railing to keep from falling. Shields at 80%, Nova reported. More hits, the lights flickered. 60%. Lee's military training kicked in. He'd served in the Human Defense Force before becoming a trader. His hands moved across the controls like he was playing music. The Star Hope suddenly spun to the left, then dove under one of the attacking ships. The bounty hunters had expected them to run straight ahead. "Nice move," Hannah said with a grin, but there were still 3 ships hunting them, and the Star Hope wasn't built for combat. Shields at 40%. Yuna closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. Her telepathic abilities had been growing stronger since leaving the slave colony. Maybe she could help. She felt the thoughts of the bounty hunters. Their leader was planning to disable the Star Hope's engines, then board and take her alive. The other 2 ships would come from different angles to trap them. "Lee!" she called out. "They're going to attack from above and below in 10 seconds. "How? Do you know that?" "I can hear their thoughts." Without questioning her, Lee yanked the controls hard to the right. 2 streams of laser fire crossed exactly where they would have been. "Incredible," he breathed. "There's more," Yuna said, her eyes still closed in concentration. "The ship on our left has engine problems. If you hit their rear thruster, they'll lose power." Lee spun the Star Hope around and fired their small defensive cannons. The shots hit exactly where Yuna had said. The bounty hunter ship spun out of control, falling behind. 2 left, Hannah announced. But the remaining ships were getting closer. Their weapons were much stronger than the Star Hope's. "Shields at 20%, Nova warned. Yuna reached deeper with her mind. She could feel her father's thoughts aboard the lead ship. He was terrified and ashamed, but also angry. He blamed everyone except himself for his problems. She also felt something else. The bounty hunter leader was planning to ram them if they couldn't capture her alive. "Lee, we need to get out of here right now," she said urgently. "They're going to crash into us." "Jump drive is almost ready," Hannah called out. The bounty hunter ship suddenly accelerated toward them. Lee saw it coming and pushed the engines to maximum power. The Star Hope lurched forward just as the enemy ship scraped past their hull. Sparks flew across the bridge. The lights went out for a moment, then came back dim and flickering. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Nova reported. "Sealing emergency bulkheads. Jump." "Drive ready," Hannah shouted. "Do it." The stars outside stretched into long lines of light. Then everything went quiet. They had escaped, but Yuna knew this wasn't over. Her father and the bounty hunters would keep hunting them, and next time, they might not be so lucky. "Thank you," Lee said quietly. "Your abilities saved our lives." Yuna nodded, but she felt sick inside. Her own father had tried to capture her and sell her back into slavery. Some wounds, she realized, never really heal. Part 7. The Choice, the Star. Hope limped into Harmony Station with smoke trailing from her damaged engines. Lee had pushed the ship too hard, trying to outrun the bounty hunters. Now they needed repairs, and Harmony Station was the only safe port for 3 light years, or so they thought. "Something's wrong," Hannah said as they docked. "The station's too quiet. Where is everyone?" The docking bay was nearly empty. Usually Harmony Station buzzed with traders and travelers from across the galaxy. Now it felt like a ghost town. "Stay." "Closer," Lee warned as they walked down the boarding ramp. His hand rested on the weapon at his hip. They made it exactly 50 steps before the trap closed. Armed figures stepped out from behind cargo containers and maintenance equipment. Bounty hunters, at least 20 of them. Their weapons were all pointed at the Star Hope crew. "Well, well," said a familiar voice. The famous Captain Lee. Overseer Vax stepped into view, his red eyes gleaming with hatred. Half of his face was covered in bandages from their fight at the mining colony. "You cost me a lot of money, human," Vax growled. "My operation is shut down. My reputation is ruined. All because you couldn't mind your own business." Behind Vax, more figures appeared. Yuna's heart sank when she saw her father among them. Kang looked thinner than before, and his clothes were dirty. The syndicate had not been kind to him. "Daughter," Kang said, his voice shaking, "come home, please, we can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," Yuna replied, stepping closer to Lee. "You sold me. You chose gambling over your own child. I had no choice," Kang's voice cracked. "The syndicate will kill me if I don't pay them." Maybe you should have thought of that before you bet everything we had, Una said. The words came out harder than she intended, but she meant them. Vax smiled, showing sharp teeth. How touching. A family reunion. But we're not here for sentiment, he gestured to his bounty hunters. Here's how this works. The girl comes with us quietly, and the rest of you get to live. Try to fight, and we kill everyone. Lee stepped in front of Una. She's not going anywhere. Actually, Vax said, that's her choice to make. All eyes turned to Una. She could feel her father's desperate hope. She could sense Lee's determination to protect her, even if it meant dying. She felt Hannah's quiet courage as the engineer prepared to fight alongside her captain. Well, girl, Vax demanded, what's it going to be? Come with us and save your friends or watch them die for your freedom. Una's mind raced. For a moment she considered it. These people had already risked so much for her. How could she let them die? But then she remembered something Lee had told her weeks ago. Family doesn't abandon each other. I have a different idea, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Oh? Vax looked amused. Please, enlighten us. Nova, Una called out loudly. Are you recording this? Yes, Una, came the AI's voice from hidden speakers on Lee's belt. Everything is being transmitted and recorded. Vax's smile faded. What are you talking about? This whole conversation, Una said. Your threats. Your admission that you ran illegal slave operations. It's all being broadcast live to the Galactic Justice Network. You're bluffing, Vax snarled. Am I? Una pulled out a small device Lee had given her weeks ago. This is a personal transmitter. Every word you've said is being heard by authorities across 3 star systems. Several bounty hunters looked nervous now. They'd signed up to capture one girl, not to be recorded confessing to slavery and murder threats. Even if that's true, Vax said, but his voice was less confident now. You're still outnumbered. Actually, said a new voice from behind the bounty hunters, I think you're the ones who are outnumbered. Security officers poured into the docking bay from every entrance. Their leader was Commander Park of the Galactic Patrol. Her uniform was crisp, and her weapon was already drawn. Overseer Vax, Commander Park announced, you're under arrest for slavery, kidnapping, and threatening civilians in neutral space. The bounty hunters looked around frantically. They were surrounded. This is impossible, Vax breathed. How did you? The girl's right, Commander Park said with a slight smile. We've been listening to everything. The Galactic Justice Network has been tracking illegal slave operations for months. Thanks to your confession, we now have everything we need. Kang fell to his knees. Una, please. I'm still your father. Una looked down at him. Part of her still loved him, despite everything. But she also knew that love wasn't enough to fix what he'd broken. You were my father, she said quietly. But fathers protect their children, they don't sell them. She turned to Lee. I choose my real family. Lee put his arm around her shoulders. Are you sure? This means there's no going back. I'm sure, Una said. I'm exactly where I belong. As the security officers led Vax and the bounty hunters away in chains, Commander Park approached them. Miss Una, she said formally, your testimony today will help shut down slave operations across this sector. That took real courage. I had good teachers, Una replied, looking at Lee and Hannah. The human way, Commander Park said with approval, protecting the innocent no matter the cost. Later, as they watched the security ships leave with their prisoners, Hannah asked, how did you arrange all that? Lee grinned. I didn't. That was all Una's idea. She contacted the Galactic Patrol days ago when we first detected the bounty hunters. You knew they were coming? Hannah asked Una. I suspected they'd try to corner us eventually, Una said, so I made sure someone would be listening when they did. Lee looked at her with pride. Maya would have loved you. I would have loved her too, Una replied. For the first time since her rescue, she felt truly free. Part 8. Legal Victory. The courthouse on New Sol was nothing like the cold, threatening places Una had known before. Warm wooden walls covered in earth ivy made the building feel welcoming. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting golden patterns on the floor. Una sat next to Lee in the front row, wearing a new blue dress that Hana had bought for her. Her hands trembled as she smoothed the fabric over her knees. "Nervous?" Lee asked quietly. "What if they say no?" Yuna whispered back. "What if they decide I can't be your daughter because I'm not human?" Lee took her hand. "Then we'll appeal to a higher court. And if that doesn't work, we'll appeal again. Human law doesn't give up easily." The judge entered the courtroom. Judge Kim was a stern-looking woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She'd been reviewing their case for 3 weeks. "Please rise," called the court clerk. Everyone stood as Judge Kim took her seat behind the tall wooden desk. "This is an unusual case." The judge began, looking at the papers in front of her. "Captain Lee wishes to formally adopt Yuna, a member of the Cytherian species. Several alien governments have filed protests, claiming this adoption violates their sovereignty laws." Yuna's heart sank. She knew some species thought humans were too aggressive about protecting non-humans. However, Judge Kim continued, "This court recognizes that the minor in question was abandoned by her biological father, who sold her into slavery. Under both human law and galactic protection statutes, she has the right to choose her own guardian." On the other side of the courtroom, a Thraxian diplomat stood up. He was 8 feet tall with grey skin and looked very angry. "Your Honor, diplomat said in a booming voice, "humans cannot simply claim ownership of other species' children. This sets a dangerous precedent." "Ownership?" Lee shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "She's not property to be owned. She's a person who deserves protection." "Captain Lee, please sit down," Judge Kim said firmly but not unkindly. Lee sat, but Yuna could feel the tension radiating from him. She knew he was thinking about all the slaves they'd seen, all the children who had no one to protect them. "Your Honor," said their lawyer, Ms. Park, as she stood up. "May I present evidence of the minor's wishes?" Judge Kim nodded. "Proceed." Ms. Park activated a holographic display. Video recordings appeared in the air above their table, recordings of Yuna's testimony about the slave markets, about her father's betrayal, about finding safety with Lee's crew. "As you can see," Ms. Park said, "this young woman has clearly expressed her desire to remain with Captain Lee. She has been living safely aboard his ship for 4 months. She is healthy, educated, and protected." The Thraxian diplomat tried to interrupt. "But the legal implications, Judge Kim said sharply, "are exactly why this court exists, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." She turned to look directly at Yuna. "Young lady, would you please stand?" Yuna's legs felt weak, but she stood up. The judge's eyes were serious, but not frightening. "Do you understand what adoption means?" Judge Kim asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Yuna said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It means Lee would legally be my father. It means I would have the same rights as a human child." "And is this what you want?" "More than anything," Yuna said, and meant it. Judge Kim was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Lee, then at Yuna, then at the alien diplomats who were watching, with disapproval. "This court finds that the minor known as Yuna was legally abandoned by her biological father when he sold her into slavery," Judge Kim announced. "Furthermore, Captain Lee has demonstrated his ability and willingness to provide proper care, education, and protection." She lifted an official stamp. "Therefore, this adoption is approved under Human Family Law, Section 12. Yuna is now legally the daughter of Captain Lee with all rights and protections that status provides." The stamp came down with a solid thunk. Yuna felt like she might faint. Lee wrapped her in a hug that lifted her feet off the ground. "We did it," he whispered in her ear. "You're officially my daughter now." "Captain Lee," Judge Kim continued, "you understand that this makes you responsible for this young woman's safety, education, and welfare until she reaches legal adulthood." "I understand, Your Honor," Lee said formally. "And I accept that responsibility gladly." The Thraxian diplomat stormed out of the courtroom, muttering about human interference. But Yuna didn't care. She had a family now, a real legal family. Outside the courthouse, news reporters were waiting. The adoption had attracted attention across the galaxy. "Captain Lee," called a journalist, "how do you respond to critics who say humans are overstepping their authority?" Lee put his arm around Yuna's shoulders. "I respond by saying that protecting innocent children is never overstepping. It's what any decent person should do." "Miss Yuna," Another reporter asked, "What does this adoption mean to you?" Yuna thought for a moment. 6 months ago, she would have been too frightened to speak to strangers. Now she stood tall and spoke clearly. "It means I'm not alone anymore," she said. "It means someone chose me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That's what families do." Later that evening, aboard the Star Hope, they celebrated with Hana and Nova. There was cake and laughter and stories about the future. "So," Lee said as they cleaned up, "ready to learn how to really pilot this ship?" Yuna grinned. "Try and stop me, Dad." The word felt perfect. Part 9. New Mission 6. Months after the adoption, Yuna stood at the pilot controls of the Star Hope with steady hands. The ship responded to her touch like it was reading her mind. She'd grown 3 inches taller and put on healthy weight. Her silver skin glowed with confidence instead of fear. "Bringing us out of hyperspace now," she announced, pulling back on the control stick. The stars shifted from streaks of light back to tiny points. Ahead of them, the trading station Crossroads hung in space like a metal flower with spinning arms. "Perfect approach," Lee said from the co-pilot seat. Pride filled his voice. "You're getting better than me at this." "I had a good teacher," Yuna replied with a grin. "They were here to pick up engine parts for a merchant on Kepler 7. Just routine work." But as they docked, Nova's voice filled the bridge with urgency. "Captain, I'm receiving a coded distress signal. It's very faint, hidden inside normal station communications." Lee frowned. "Put it through." Static crackled from the speakers. Then a small voice whispered through the noise. "It was a child, maybe 10 years old. Please, if anyone can hear this, that my name is Jin. I'm trapped on level 15 of the station. They're going to sell me tomorrow. Please help." The signal cut off. Yuna's face went pale. "Dad, we have to—" "No," Lee said, already unbuckling his harness. "Hana, start prep for emergency departure. We might need to leave fast." "Already on it," Hana called from the engine room. Lee turned to Yuna. "This could be dangerous. If you want to stay on the ship—" "Not a chance," Yuna interrupted. "That child needs help. We both know what it's like to be abandoned." Lee studied her face. She wasn't the scared girl he'd rescued anymore. She was strong, brave, and determined to protect others just like him. "All right," he said, "but we do this smart. No running in without a plan." They spent an hour mapping the station's layout. Level 15 was in the industrial section where few people went. "Perfect for illegal activities. Nova, scan for life signs on that level," Lee ordered. "I detect 12 humanoid figures, 11 adults and 1 small child in the central chamber." 11 guards for 1 kid? Yuna asked. "That's a lot of security." "Which means someone important is buying," Lee said grimly. "Someone with deep pockets." They made their way through the station disguised as maintenance workers. Lee carried a tool bag, while Yuna pushed a cart full of fake repair equipment. Her telepathic abilities let her sense the emotions around them, mostly boredom and tiredness, from station workers, but as they got closer to level 15, she felt something else. Fear, desperation, and underneath it all, a small spark of hope. "That's him," she whispered to Lee. "Jin. He's scared, but still fighting." They found a service hatch that led to the level's ventilation system. Lee went first, crawling through the narrow metal tunnel. Yuna followed, her smaller size making it easier for her to move quietly. Through a vent grate, they could see into the chamber. Jin was a small boy with purple skin and large eyes. His species was Altarian, peaceful people who lived far from the main trade routes. What was he doing here? Around him stood 11 armed guards and a woman in expensive clothes. She was examining Jin like he was a piece of machinery. "His telepathic range is impressive for his age," the woman was saying. "He'll make an excellent spy once properly trained." "Training breaks most of them," replied one of the guards. "You sure you want to risk it?" "The ones who survive are worth millions," the woman said coldly. Lee's jaw tightened. These people weren't just selling a slave, they were planning to torture a child into becoming a weapon. "Same plan as before?" Yuna whispered. Lee nodded. "You distract them with your abilities, I'll get the boy." But before they could move, Jin looked up directly at their hiding spot. His eyes widened with hope. "Someone's here," he said quietly. The guards spun around, weapons raised. "What did you say, boy?" "I said someone's here to help me," Jin replied, louder this time. "And they're not alone." Lee cursed under his breath. The kid was brave, but not very subtle. "Change of plans," he whispered to Yuna. "We go in loud." Lee kicked out the vent grate and dropped into the room. His stun blaster was already firing before his feet hit the ground. 3 guards went down immediately. Yuna dropped down behind him, her own weapon ready. "Jin, get behind us." The boy ran to them while Lee and Yuna fought back to back. Her telepathic abilities let her predict where the guards would shoot, while his military training kept them both alive. "The exits are blocked," Yuna called out as more guards poured into the room. "Then we make our own exit," Lee replied. He pulled out a small, explosive charge. "Everyone hold on." The blast blew a hole in the outer wall. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the station. "This way." Lee grabbed Jin and ran toward the hole. Beyond it lay the docking bay where the Star Hope waited. They jumped. For a terrifying moment, they fell through space. Then the Star Hope's tractor beam caught them and pulled them safely aboard. "Go, go, go," Lee shouted as they tumbled onto the ship's deck. Hana had the engines ready. The Star Hope shot away from the station like a bullet, leaving the guards far behind. Later, as they sat in the ship's common room, Jin stared at them with wonder. "You really came for me," he said quietly, "even though you don't know me." "That's what humans do," Yuna said. "We protect children who need help." "But I'm not human." "Neither am I," Yuna replied. "But this human adopted me anyway, made me part of his family." Jin looked at Lee hopefully. Could I maybe? Do you want a family, Jin?" Lee asked gently. The boy nodded, tears in his large eyes. "Then welcome to the Star Hope crew," Lee said. "We'll start the adoption papers tomorrow." As Jin fell asleep in Yuna's old room, she found Lee on the bridge staring out at the stars. "Thank you, Dad," she said quietly. It was the first time she'd called him that without thinking about it first. The word just felt natural now. Lee smiled and put his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you for helping me remember what family really means." "So what's next?" Yuna asked. "Nova's been monitoring more distress signals," Lee said. "There are a lot of children out there who need help." "Then we'd better get a bigger ship," Yuna said with a grin. They stood together watching the stars, knowing their family was just beginning to grow.